in this video, in this brief video, it was brief for me, it is under 20 minutes. In this video, I'm going to talk to you about dog collars. A lot of people I know are now new puppy owners, new dog owners, and they know that, again, through 30 plus years of owning dogs, well, what do you have in your inventory? What would you recommend? What works for you? And then there are also people who have some issues with dogs and want to know, what do you use in terms of training tools? And what do you know about prong collars? What do you know about e-collars? Well, I'll tell you, I've got everything in my inventory, and I have used everything in my inventory at some point in my dog owning life. So let me take you through some of the different collars that are available, why I bought them, how I like them. Let's see if we're on the same page. So let's start out with the easy stuff first. Easy stuff is this stuff. It is the simple nylon mesh collar, cloth collar, whatever you're going to call it. This is found in Amazon, Petco, PetSmart. You can have a very plain collar that comes in all different kinds of colors and all different kinds of imprints. This is just a very basic red collar that I have to go with a harness that I happen to own for my little Bostons. These have all been handed down through various dogs in my life. I'm into bling for my Bostons. I have 2 female Bostons in my life, so therefore everything is pink and it's glitz. Again, when you have a puppy, be prepared that the fact that you're going to probably go through, I want to say at least 2 collars, because the puppy is going to grow out of a collar. And a lot of times it would make sense to, when you go to Petco or PetSmart or whatever, that you have the dog with you so that you can actually size the collar to the dog. So these are your typical everyday collars. They're sturdy enough. Now, are these chew-proof? The answer is no. These are not chew-proof. And I have some collars that actually have been chewed. So keep that in mind, that if it's not around the dog's neck, that you put it somewhere where the dog cannot get at it. Next in line, we have the plain old leather collar. This is got a sturdy buckle on it. I've had these collars for a few years now. I use these on my German Shepherds. I use them as everyday collars. I use them sometimes if they're in the backyard. Again, washable, soap and water. They don't crack, at least mine don't. And very reliable, very, very sturdy buckle. This is your typical, and the thing too about these leather collars, they last. They're strong. And unless they're going to be going through the heat of the desert and the snow and cold, they're pretty sturdy and they will hold up. Another option for a leather collar, if you want to do something a little bit more over the top, we have these beauties over here. This is a collar that is from a company called Around the Collar. And I purchased these at a boutique, Wet Nose Boutique, here in the Chicagoland area. I purchased these two collars exactly, I want to say about 2009. This one in black and red with their Swarovski crystals, and Around the Clock lets you choose the crystal color that you want. So this one was for my Olympia, and this brown one with the citrons was for Zarina. So my Empress and my Goddess each had plenty of bling. I needed collars that befit their status. They were 2 German Shepherds and they were absolutely gorgeous. And these make a statement when you put them on. And in addition to that, the collars also come with matching leashes. Now the bling isn't all down the entire leash. It's at the handle, and it's at the where the collar meets the leash. But these, I'll tell you, they make a statement. And they hold up very well, as you can see. I don't have any missing crystals. They're sturdy buckles. And now this black and red one goes on Ophelia, and this brown and citron goes on Nabucco. So with that, do a little bit more of the controversial collars. And the first one that I'm going to mention is the prong collar. I have used these prong collars on my German Shepherds. I have used them on my Dobermans. I have never used them on my Lab. I have never used them on my Bostons. I view these collars as training tools. I view them as insurance. These collars actually I prefer, and hear me out on this, because I know there are a number of people who do not like prong collars. They find them to be, hurtful and so forth. But I will tell you this. My two German Shepherds, before Nabucco and Ophelia, were Zarina and Olympia. Those girls were pretty big. They were at any point in their adult life, prior to them entering their senior years, they weighed in at 90 to 95 pounds. And when you are walking those two girls, that's at least 180 pounds on the end of a leash, 2 leashes. And when I walked them, I usually walked them on a loose leash, meaning that the collar was on them, but there was a loop in the leash because they were walking alongside me. But if they happened to spot a squirrel or a deer, and at one time there was even a coyote, they immediately react. And by react, that means you can feel them, the leash kind of going from the loop to going to a straight leash. I have to keep those girls under control. And that's where this comes in. I live in a neighborhood where there are a lot of children. And children go by on bicycles on the sidewalk. There are couples walking. And I need to make sure that my girls, and now my boy and girl, I have them under control. And this is where this comes in. And especially too, if you are an individual who doesn't have a lot of strength, or you are a petite individual, this comes in handy. Now, do my girls always wear these at home? Absolutely not. But again, when I need to have that extra feeling of protection, when I am in a situation where I know that if something happens and my girls or my boy and girl react, and God forbid something happens and somebody, because I will tell you this, in short, I came across a gentleman who was, we had a conversation. He's a lawyer. And he was telling me about a couple that he is representing. The woman was bit by a German Shepherd and had half of her arm taken off up here. Because the bite force of a German Shepherd is 234 pounds per square inch. Now, do I want that kind of liability? I personally believe that my dogs would not do that. I don't know what was with that particular Shepherd, and it's not to badmouth Shepherds because I love the breed. But is that something that I want to take a chance on? And that's no. And it's the same thing, again, as I said, I live in a neighborhood with children, with older adults are here as well. I want to be absolutely certain that I have my dogs under control at all times. And when my dog is walking on a loose leash, this collar is just the same as a leather collar. It just is on the dog. Where this comes in handy too is, and where I think this is a difference too between this and a regular leash, is that when you have a dog that is pulling and constantly pulling, that hurts the throat, that hurts the trachea. You put this on the dog, you give it a quick pop, and you say, don't do that. That dog immediately understands, because pressure is applied not only here, but it's applied around the neck. And you have to, most importantly, know how to use these and how to put them on and how to fit them. And that's when they work, because otherwise, if you get the wrong size or you don't know how to use them, then yes, you're going to have an issue. So always make sure that you read the directions, you look at a YouTube video, or you rely on your trainer and watch your trainer, because there are a lot of German Shepherd trainers that will use this because it's very practical. Enough said on that. The last controversial collar I have the e-collar. Yes, I have an e-collar. I've had these also for quite a while. Do my dogs always wear them? No. No. I mean, I must have this collar on, I don't know, once every 2 months, once every 3 months. I put it on when I need for them to understand what it is that what kind of behavior that I want them to stop. I have never used this on any of my dogs other than Shepherds and Dobermans. If this is not suitable for Beagles or Lab, at least I don't think so. These are not suitable for every dog. They are not suitable for every owner. A lot of hunters will sometimes use the e-collar simply because when they're pheasant hunting, the dog is like a mile, mile and a half away, and they need to call it back. So they press this little gizmo and the dog comes back. Now, this little gizmo has a dial reading from, I think it's 0 or 1 all the way up to 10. Your dog has to be foaming at the mouth and aggressive and ready to bite somebody or tear them apart for you to use 10. I mean, that's beyond belief. I usually will have this on a 2, simply because there's a lot of fur on my dogs, so that this little gizmo has to go through all the fur. I've used this with Ophelia because she's a little barky gal. And when I want to tell her that you do not bark at every single frickin' thing that walks past the gate or walks past the sidewalk, or especially when you have the dogs across the street, there's an invisible fence. And so whenever Ophelia sees the dogs, everybody's got to bark back and forth, but the neighbors don't always like that. So I will put this on her and I'll just beep and she gets it. And then the next time she goes out, I don't have to put this on her. She can go out in a regular collar or no collar. And that's why when I say Olympia quiet, or I should say Ophelia quiet, she understands. Now, I will take you outside and I will show you another reason why I had the e-collar and why I used it on Nabucco. I probably should have used it earlier than I did, and you will see why. So let's go outside, and then we'll come back in and I'll summarize everything that I've talked about, and we'll be on our way. So we're out here in the backyard, and what you're looking at is a tree and Nabucco. And this is, it's just a regular, a maple tree, right? It's a maple tree. I don't know, I'm not a horticulturalist, but this is the way trees are supposed to look, right? Okay, now let's take a look at one of the trees that Nabucco has kind of utterly destroyed, at least the trunk. Now, Nabucco is kind of what I would call a squirrel aficionado. And when he can't get the squirrel, he decides to take it out on the tree. And so what you can see is that he has stripped the bark almost completely off this tree. Now, he doesn't eat the bark, it just lays here on the ground. But should I have used an e-collar and saved the trunk of my tree? Now, the good part is, as you can see up here, the tree itself hasn't been damaged. In terms of, it's still a tree, it still has leaves, it still has everything going for it, but it has certainly been the talk of my immediate neighbors. Now, this is when I started, again, should I have used an e-collar sooner rather than later? Probably, but this is before e-collar, and that is after e-collar. And so there are reasons, as I mentioned earlier, why e-collars come in handy. In summary, whether you use one of these little collars, the little mesh collar, whether you use a prong collar, whether you use a leather blitzy collar, or blingy collar, I should say, always make sure that, and this is really one of the most important things that I will say about collars, and I mentioned it earlier. Try to have your dog with you when you decide to choose the collar of your choice, especially when you're choosing like leather collars or some of these other little collars, because I'll tell you something, when you are training your dog, when you're walking your dog, there are times when your dog, like a four-legged child, is going to act up. And so the next thing you know, the dog is backing up, you're moving forward, and then all of a sudden this collar is starting to come over the top of the dog's head, and the next thing you know, you have no dog. You have no dog. I mean, you're standing there literally with the collar and the leash in your hand, and your dog is gone. And then you're chasing after your dog. So it's very important that when you choose your collar, either, you know, take a tape measure, measure the dog ahead of time, or take your dog with you and fit the collar so that, you know, again, that it fits the dog and that you have a right fit. Because some of these collars too, you'll notice they only have holes that go only so far. And so I know that there is always sometimes a tendency to be economical and to get a dog, you know, get a collar that, you know, the dog will grow into it or it'll grow into it. But then, as I said, you can end up with a leash, a collar, and no dog. So with that, I'd like to say thank you very much for watching. Yeah, I hope you have answered some questions that you may have had. And if there is anything that you would like to ask me, or if you need help finding the perfect pup for you and your family, I'll leave my contact information below. So don't forget to click the subscribe button. And thank you very much for watching. Bye for now.